This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 6 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we have three-time Super Bowl champion Mark Schlereth as our guest. Mark, who was a longtime ESPN analyst. He's been with Fox Sports now since 2017 and also hosts a very highly rated morning radio show on 104.3 The Fan in Denver. Mark, thanks so much for making some time very early in the morning here to come on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Not a problem at all.
So your radio show is one of the reasons that I was excited to get you on the podcast today to offer some perspective on how Denver feels about the way that the Nuggets have been treated nationally. But I'm also always curious with former pro athletes who now talk about all sports on the radio. Do you or did you ever have to deal with fans kind of questioning your ability to talk about those other sports, to talk about basketball, baseball, hockey, because you're forever linked with football?
Yeah, I don't shy away from that. I'm not a basketball expert. I'm a competition expert.
Right.
I know what it takes to compete. And I have enough people on the inside, guys that play, guys that used to play, guys that coach, that if I need information, I can get information. So, it's one of those things. I don't worry about what other people think. There's a saying that always floats around the internet that what is it, that bees don't, I can't even remember what the damn thing is now. It's too early, but, bees don't concern themselves with the no. What is it? What is it? Well, something effect. There's a bees one that I really like, but I can't remember it. But yeah, wolves don't concern themselves with the opinion of sheep, something like that. So I just don't really care what you think or what anybody else thinks. I do the work. I study, and I know enough about all the other sports to be dangerous. My son played professional baseball, and I coached him all the way up until through high school, and so I tend to know a little bit about that. And like I said, anything that I don't know, I always relate it back to football. I always can weave a story in and relate it back to the competition aspect of it. And I'll be the first to admit, man, I'm not the biggest sports fan of the world. I'm a huge competition fan. I mean, I don't give a shit if we're washing dishes. I want to kick your ass at washing dishes. That's just the way I'm wired. And so I'm more of a competition fan. I love to watch teams compete. And I tell you, I just texted Michael Malone. He's a buddy of mine, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. I love, as skilled as Nikola Jokić is, as skilled as Jamal Murray is, and KCP and all the rest of the guys, dude, I love their mental toughness. There's no question in my mind, especially in the NBA, where the NBA is softer than whale poop. Guys are drama, just totally. I just looked at Tatum. I was like, you're Ben Roethlisberger, like on that ankle. I'm sure it's hurt. I'm sure your ankle really hurts. I get it. But don't be a drama queen about it. I was expecting him to come out in one clown shoe, taped up. He's like, yeah, you see how big my shoe is? I had to wear a clown shoe. My ankle's so swollen. I got so much tape on it. If you can't play, get out or just play well. My rule is you got to play hurt, you got to play injured, but you got to play well hurt, and you got to play well injured. And if you can't, then get out. And so, if you're not tough enough to play well injured, then get out. I don't need to see you limping around and grimace face and, oh, look how hurt I am. Oh, it's an excuse in the writing, and I'm probably way off base and people are going to be pissed at me. But again, I don't really give a crap. So I told Michael Malone, I go, the thing that impresses me about your team is not the skill levels. Talent is wasted on talented people. There's plenty of talented people that ain't worth a crap. The mental and physical toughness, there's no coincidence in my mind that the two most mentally and physically tough basketball teams are in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, and I think that it's that ability to judge competitiveness, to judge mental toughness, to judge physical toughness that you as a former professional athlete would have. And I think it's an odd stereotype that fans kind of create with former players. Like fans think that they can talk about any sport. They don't question Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, or Skip Bayless talking about any sport, but people like you who played Boomer Esiason, Shannon Sharp, Jay Williams, like it's almost like you with fans, at least, you need to work harder to build credibility when talking about other sports that aren't the sport that you played in.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I understand that. Like everybody's entitled to their opinion, but very few know what it's like to to strap it up
Right.
on a championship Sunday, and
Right.
and the mental pressure and the physical pressure and the things that you put yourself through to do that, regardless of the sport. I mean, they're all tough, and my son pitched professionally for 13 years, 4 years in the big leagues. And it was a freaking grind. And and he pitched hurt, and he pitched, and his whole career was being injured. And so I get it, man. I know how tough it is.
How is the daily grind of morning radio? Getting up at 4 a.m. every morning to have to create 3 hours of content. Is that something that's exhausting?
No, no, I find it energizing. I've always been an early morning guy anyhow. So that's never been an issue for me, even when I was playing. I mean, I always showed up at the facility. I was the first guy in the facility every morning at 5 a.m. And so I'd rehab for an hour or two, and then I'd go in and study film until our 9 o'clock meeting. So I just have always been a morning guy. As a matter of fact, when I came back to doing local radio, I said, because they were like, "Hey, we don't know if we want to put you in the afternoon or the morning." I go, I'm not going to do the afternoon. I want to do the morning. That's who I am. So, that's part of it. For me, radio, I have a philosophy, and I probably learned it mostly from Colin Cowherd back in my ESPN days. Um, and it goes like this. I kind of morphed it into my own philosophy. But the bottom line is, um, most of the people that are going to work, 90 whatever percent of the people that are driving down the highway to get to work are going to a job they hate. And my thought process is this. I'm going to talk sports, but I want to entertain you. At the end of the day, I want you to be putting your 100th widget together at 11 o'clock in the morning and just break out laughing out loud, going, that dude's an idiot. And that's really my goal. And it's interesting because I get stopped all the time, and we've had the number one rated program regardless of genre for 7 straight years. We have dominated this market.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to say that I think my philosophy works. And people are entertained. I get stopped every day about my radio show, and I never get stopped about the incredible zone running breakdown that I did, or whatever. I get stopped about, hey man, when you told that story about the cat turd and the banana bread, that was freaking hilarious, man. I almost drove my car off the road. That's a daily occurrence, and that's what I'm trying to capture organically. None of it is, you know, none of it is predetermined. None of it is written or scripted. It's all extemporaneous. 100% of what I do is off the cuff. Um, and everybody thinks they can do it. Everybody thinks they can do it. It's like the Mike Tyson thing. Everybody thinks they can, box until they get punched in the mouth, right? Everybody thinks they can do it. And it's a challenge. There's no question that you have to be gifted to a certain extent to be able to play that way. But I don't want to know anything my partner says. We'll put a text chain together, and we'll say, hey man, we want to discuss this. We want to discuss this. I don't want to know what your opinion is, and I don't tell them what my opinion is, and it just becomes truly organic. Like there's no, there's no scripted, okay, you're going to say this and I'm going to get
Sure.
angry. And like, none of that happens on our show. We just don't do it that way.
So then on top of your radio schedule, you also have a lot of travel during the football season as a game analyst for Fox. And the recent trend for athletes is to go directly from the field into the broadcast booth. You waited about 17 years before you became a full-time game analyst. Was that a difficult transition?
Well, I did 16 straight years of being a studio analyst. So,
Sure.
I mean, I walked off the football field and I had a job. Um, I really planned on taking a couple years off. And after 2 weeks, my wife was like, if you don't find something to do, we're getting divorced. You're driving me crazy. Um, and I was very much, I'm Sean, I like to work. I'm my father's child that way. So I wanted to do stuff. So I literally I literally flew out to ESPN. I think I retired in May. I flew out like the day after I retired. I auditioned. They hired me, and I had a job. And so I started working in June. So 16 years of doing that. But the transition, I'll be honest with you, the transition to doing games. Um, Sometimes I think I was better when I had no idea what I was doing than I am now. Like my very first game. And I think there's a lot of things that I look back on that I probably would have done or should have done differently. But of course, you don't know. You don't know until you do it. Um, Doing a live game is incredibly exhilarating. It's as close as you can get to playing the game without beating yourself to a pulp. And
Yeah.
so, but at the same time, man, you have all these things that you want to say, all these things that you studied, all these things that you prepared for, all these kind of, and if the game doesn't flow that way, you just have to put it in the circular file and move on. And it's really hard to let go. Sometimes you see something and you want to get to it, and and then it's over, and you got to go to a game break or you got to go to some commercial or whatever, and you can't get to it, and then the game moves on. You want to go back, but you can't really go back. One of the big issues I have is trying to analyze a 4-yard run. Nobody really gives a I care, because I see the game through this straw hole. Like, I see the game through the lens that I played it. And so I see cool things inside that you could really educate the general fan on. And part of it is you got to let go of the 4-yard runs and talk about global concepts and talk about other things. And sometimes that's really hard for me to do. The other thing is I have studied the game like I was a coach. So I knew as an offensive lineman, right? The quarterbacks, everybody just takes what they say and it's like gospel. Um, and so I've studied the game like I was a head coach or a quarterback. And I've put a lot of time and a lot of effort into expanding my knowledge of football, and understanding it more globally, to try to earn the respect of the people that hire you and try to make sure that people know that you really understand the game. And ultimately, um, it's been great because I think I think when I sit down with coaches, they open up to me because they're just like, oh, this guy really knows. This guy's really studied. This guy really. I mean, I still watch probably 25 hours of film a week preparing to do a game.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm a film junkie and everything else. But um, when you have detailed information and you can talk that way with coaches, they open up to you. But the bottom line, man, again, like my radio career, it's more about the entertainment value. Um, and you've got to understand, you got to know the game, but you can't beat people over the head with it. It's a nuanced thing. So it's one of those things that you're still learning. It's exponentially harder to call a game than it is to sit in studio and lip on about whatever. I mean, that I can do that in my sleep.
Why is it the closest thing you could get to playing in a game? Is it because of the preparation that's involved?
Yeah, if you do it, in my opinion, if you do it right, man, it's a full-time job, I mean, I spend 40, 50 hours during the week prepping to do the game. And then, you're there at practice, you're talking to the teams. This whole COVID thing made you had a Zoom with the teams. The teams don't want
Yeah.
to meet with you anymore. They want to Zoom. And I just refuse to do it unless it's absolutely last resort. So I go to the stadium. I fly out on Thursday nights. Um, I'm at the practice facility of the home team on Friday. I watch the entire practice. I sit down with players face to face. I sit down with coaches face to face. with GMs face to face. I do all that stuff face to face. Saturdays, the visiting team wants to Zoom before they leave. Everybody's got 10 minutes and they just want to get out. And I'm like, I'm meeting you at the hotel, and we're going to sit down in a meeting room. We're gonna have a conversation with one another. And even if that means I got to cut the conversation short, I want to do it in person. Um, I want to meet guys. I want to have that sense about doing that. And so you go through all that preparation, then you call the game. And at the end of the day, whether you think you've called a good game, whether you get called a bad game, whether it was a great game, whether it was a boring, whatever it was, man, it's the NFL. And then you got to take all that prep you just did and basically throw it away, can it, and start over again. And I start on the plane ride home. I have stuff downloaded. I have all the coaches tape from the different teams I've consulted with. So I've got all the coaches tape, every game. I've already downloaded it. And so I start looking and preparing on the plane Sunday night, flying home for my next week's game, and start taking my notes and start putting together some concepts and some ideas, and trying to look at what teams are on third down or what teams are on, first and 10. Like what is a team base? Base is first and 10 or second down and 2, second down and 5 minus. Like that's who you are base. So whatever your formational tendencies are, whatever what your personnel grouping tendencies are, that's what you are in base. What are you in nickel, or what are you in sub? And so that's second down and 5+ or 6+, third down and 6+, whatever, however you want to parse it. Everybody does it a little bit differently. And what are you in third and long, and who are you? What formation do you run? Who's your go-to guy? How are you trying to get people free? So I'll start that process on Sunday night. Then I'll get home, and normally I get home usually between 10:30 and 12:30, and I'll sit down in my kitchen and watch the Broncos, because I'm going to talk about it in a few hours. So I'll sit down and watch the Broncos. I'll spend 2 hours breaking down the Broncos game. It'll be 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll go to bed, and I'm up at 4:30, and I'm on the radio. And so it's a grind, and nobody cares that it's a grind, but it's one that I absolutely am energized by.
Are you surprised that that's something that that Tom Brady would want to do in retirement, or does it make sense because it feels close to being a player still?
Yeah, I don't know. There's part of me that doesn't think Tom Brady will ever be in the booth. There's part of me that feels like he'll go into the studio at Fox. But yeah, I think there is, like, Tom is a, if you know Tom at all, and I don't know him well um at all, but I know him well enough to know that dude is a grinder, man. That dude works. And everybody I've ever talked to, whether it's New England teammates or um, I did his first year in Tampa. I think I did 4 or 5 games, and it was incredible. Like, every guy was essentially, "Hey, man, I thought I was a pro." Like, I always told my son when he was coming up, I was like, "Just because you play a pro sport doesn't make you a professional, and you got to understand how to be a professional. You got to understand how to study, how to prepare, how to make sure you don't let your teammates down, how to take care of yourself so you can stay on the field. You got to learn all those things." And every guy I talked to, from Mike Evans to Chris Godwin I mean, you name it, every dude on Tampa's roster was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying, "I thought I was a pro. I thought I worked hard. I thought I prepared. I thought I said, man, I had to pick my game up because that dude is unreal." And, it's a testament when you're having all that success, not to be sated by that success, to continue to work and continue to grind the way that Tom Brady. I have nothing but the utmost, just so much respect for the work he does, and I know he'll do from a broadcasting standpoint if he does decide to go into the booth. And again, I don't know what he's going to do, but if he does decide to do that, I don't know. I assume it'd be good. He's Tom freaking Brady, but the world's greatest American, as far as I'm concerned. So, but I know one thing: he'll be prepared.
Would it have bothered you if Fox announced that Tom Brady was taking your chair as an analyst whenever he wants it, just as they kind of set it up with Greg Olson? Or is that something that more so even fuels your competitive edge?
Oh, I will always compete. Would it like I understand I understand the pecking order, right? I get that. I mean, I played offensive line. I've got nothing in my life just handed to me. It's all it's all been a grind. And from all the injuries, and I was actually retired as a junior in college, showing up to other people's workouts, begging scouts to let me work out like that. I didn't get in the NFL because I was well sought after. I got in the NFL because I begged. I mean, so I'm not proud about. I'll do whatever it takes to continue and to work. And one thing I know about me in general is I might not be the most talented or the most gifted or whatever, but I do know that work ethic is not going to be an issue. I will outwork. I, it's just the way I'm wired. So that part I'll never shy away from. I'm not afraid to work.
But would it bother you if Fox made that announcement while like that Brady is going to be, the plan is for Brady to take your jobs, a job that you already have?
Yeah, would it bother me? Sure, it would bother me. But I mean, they've already announced that Brady goes right to the top booth, right to the
Yeah.
number one. So it already bumps me down the pecking order whenever he decides to come in. So it's already essentially happened. Um, in my competitiveness, of course I want to, continue to grow and have an opportunity to be the top guy, even though, the odds are that'll never happen. But that's all right. I don't mind long odds. That doesn't bother me or scare me. So, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to continue to do what I do and continue to work, and whatever happens is going to happen. I mean, I don't have control over that, but I do have control over the way, I approach my job, the attitude that I have, the work that I put in. That's all I can control, and so that's what I do.
Do you still like doing studio shows? Obviously, you do it less now with Fox than when you were at ESPN, but like you still go on Coward's show on occasion. You were
Yeah,
on Craig Carton's morning show a bunch last season as
yeah,
well.
yeah. No, I enjoy that. I enjoy having those conversations, and I enjoy, um, I've really enjoyed Craig Carton, getting to know Craig. He's so much fun um, and a good dude, and one of those guys that sometimes you have to set straight. And I enjoy being the guy that will basically call him on his baloney. So that's fun. And then you have so many connections. It's always been interesting to me that you think about. There's, I guess, 14 people in the nation that do what I do, right? That are game analysts. I think Fox, we have five or six, I think, teams. I think CBS has six teams. Obviously, NBC has Chris Collinsworth. ESPN now has Troy Aikman. So what is that? That's 14 guys. Oh, wait, Herbie and at Amazon. So that's 15 guys, right? So there's essentially 15 guys that do a lot of prep, that do a lot of work, that talk to each coach every week, that talk to three or four or five players every week, that have all this insight. And probably 80% of everything they prepped never hits the airwaves. And so I think one of the cool things about doing that is um, you can go and empty out that bucket of information you have on television. All the
Right.
stuff that you didn't get to in the game because the game went the way the game went. You just got to follow the game. You can't call a game that's not happening in front of you because that's the prep you did, right? You've got to call the game. And so there's so much stuff that you never get to in the course of a game that it's like there should be I always thought that every network should have their six game analysts on a daily show that basically you dump all the stuff you didn't get to on Sunday and all the key matchup games, right? And then toward the end of the week, you jump back on those shows and, you start hitting them with information that you've garnered from your study, from the people you've talked to all that stuff as you kind of prep, um, the weekend's games. And I think I just think every network has failed, um, because, like I said, 80% of that information, you're the only person that sits down one on one with that coach. I mean, there's other guys that get him in a scrum, but you're the only one that gets him one on one. You're the only one that gets that quarterback essentially one on one for the most part. You're like, there's a lot of good stuff
Yeah.
that never gets articulated during the course of a week. And so I think every network is, in my mind, has failed in that you don't use those guys. And so anyhow, that's just kind of my one man's two opinions.
So as being a national media member as well as a local radio host, how do you think the national media has done covering Jokić and the Nuggets throughout the NBA playoffs this year?
Oh, I think I think they've done a horrible job. But I understand why. I understand the Nuggets don't rate.
Yeah.
I understand the game. I get it. People here in Denver are real butthurt about it, but it's been a motivational factor for Michael Malone and his Nuggets. So, hey man, it has been so much fun for me, as just as a competition fan, to watch the Nuggets play and to even see the skill set. And I always knew how skilled Nikola Jokić was or is. But I think the other thing, some of the nuanced stuff, just the physicality that he plays with, and he beats people to a pulp. I mean, DeAndre Ayton just tapped out of game 6 with sore ribs. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm telling you, he just beats people up. We got to do this thing. And I don't know how it came up on my radio show. If you look at Nikola Jokic's arms, they're all scratched up. They got these huge scratches. And so I established on my radio show that I believe his brothers hold a underground fighting ring called Circus Club, and it's where you have to wrestle Serbian bears. And and the whole thing is, you tap on the door and they open the little window. And to get into Circus Club, you have to say, if he dies, he dies. And then, it goes, in this corner, we've got 7 foot tall, 285 pounds, Nikola Jokić. And in this corner, Bear, go, And so it's this whole ridiculous thing on the radio show that people have tended to love. But it does, like, the guy just beats people up. And I get it. This just goes back to the 2007 Rockies that had Rocktober, won 21 and 22 games and got to the World Series. And, they just went right through the National League and had to wait around to face Boston. And then Boston actually swept them. But, if you go back and look at that cover, you go back and look at what ESPN was doing. Let's introduce you to the Colorado Rockies. They play baseball in Colorado and, it's a mile high and they've got a humidor. And I mean, the whole thing was like, it was laughable. But again, like, nobody in the NBA wanted the Nuggets here. Nobody in television wanted the Nuggets here. And they don't want Miami either. But like I said earlier, man, the two most physically tough, mentally tough teams are in the NBA finals. And it says something about all the load management baloney and all the crap that we as fans have to put up with right now. It says something about the two teams that, to me, are mentally and physically the toughest teams. Does
the city of Denver hold a grudge against the national media for the way the Nuggets have been covered, or is it more just a narrative that the Nuggets play into?
Oh, no. The whole city does. Oh, yeah. I thought something Stephen A. Smith put out, and he's a dear friend of mine, but he says, do I want to go to Denver? No, I'd rather go to LA. I mean, it's just how it's how the national media feels. I mean, Brian Windhorst, and I love, Brian is a guy that I work with forever at ESPN too.
Right.
Like he said after the Nuggets swept the Lakers, it was the greatest performance by a team that's been swept in NBA history. What? What? That's your analysis? It's like, oh my gosh, it was really? like, hey, let's take it to the best of 13. Let's just go. Let's just keep moving on until the Lakers can win one. I mean, it's mind boggling. But I totally, from a television perspective, I totally get it. I understand why they do it.
Right.
And now they'll be throwing roses at Nikola and the Nuggets but my boy Michael Malone won't buy into that garbage. He'll keep them on edge. And one thing about professional athletes is they're competitive, and they do hear that stuff. And there is a motivational factor. Like when the ball's tipped, I always say this about bulletin board material. Once the ball's tipped, nobody gives a crap. I never sat back at Super Bowl 32 being, 11.5 point underdogs or whatever, sitting on the bench as we're playing the game going, they disrespected us. That doesn't come up. But if it hones your focus, if it hones the focus of your team during the course of the week of preparation, then that has to have a positive effect during the game. And I think that's really more than anything else what it does, to have that quote unquote bulletin board material for a team.
How did Denver, the city and the fans, react to Kendrick Perkins accusing Jokić of stat padding, and then hinting that NBA MVP voters were racially biased against the league's black players?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think that the Kendrick Perkins thing, became a big rallying cry here in Denver, and then it just became idiotic when it was all proved incorrect. And the whole racial bias thing was insanely stupid. And so, I mean, the bottom line is, he's on our list. I've got a list. I have a tally list in the other room that I keep on a daily basis, and you can get on it, and he is definitely on it. And but I mean, that's it. It's good, grist for the mill. It's fodder, and like everybody here feels a little bit. Everybody here feels a little bit apprehensive. I'll tell you this: there was nobody in this town that was confident. Like, yeah, if they tell you they were confident, they were lying. So we all had apprehension about, going through Minnesota, and we figured Minnesota was going to be okay, but Phoenix was, nobody was picking Denver, everybody was picking Phoenix, and then the Lakers, and it is only until, the Nuggets swept the Lakers that we are walking around right now kind of puff chested, feeling pretty good about this basketball club. But I will tell you this: the growth of this basketball team over the course of these 15 games that they've played, I think they're 12-3. The growth that you've seen, it's been exponential growth from the standpoint of, Michael Porter Jr. And I know he's a guy that they target on the defensive, they want to get matchups on him on defense and stuff. But, I've seen him make a couple of blocks. I saw him jump on the floor for, a loose ball and start a fast break that ended in a Gordon dunk. Like, he's done some things where he's played complete games. And then, Jokić and Murray. Jokić is just the most organic triple-double. He is just a machine, and always seems to make the right play. Murray has been awesome. But every game, the thing that's been cool is, one game Aaron Gordon won't shoot well, but the next game he'll have 24. And then it's KCP with his defensive ability and his being a defensive stopper. And then all of a sudden he'll put 21 in. And then it's Michael Porter Jr. pouring in 21. Like, it's been a different guy. Bruce Brown has been exceptional off the bench. So it's been a different guy every game. And it just goes to show you, not only the skill, but more importantly to me, the mental toughness. They got in a rock fight in game 2 against the Phoenix Suns and came out on top in that game. They're down 15 at halftime. The LA Lakers come back and win that game. Like, they've answered a bunch of questions for Denver fans, myself included, and feel pretty confident about them going into this finals.
Just a couple of quick things. I know we only have a couple of minutes, but is coaching something that you're still interested in? I know your name was mentioned with the Broncos offensive line coach earlier this year. Were you close to joining Sean Payton's staff?
No, I mean, I've had that conversation with Sean, but for me, I think, and Sean's old school, Bill Parcells. So there's part of doing that where you would have to, be an assistant O-line coach for a while and you work your way up. And I understand that, and I think that's a big part of, the coaching profession, kind of quote unquote paying your dues. I've paid my dues. I'm not interested in not interested in in being an assistant. And so it's one of those things. Got to be the right situation. But we've had that conversation. I've had that conversation with a lot of teams, um, and been asked my interest level, and I mean, I love what I'm doing right now, and I really enjoy that. And I have consulted with a bunch of different teams over the course of the last few years, and most teams that want to implement a zone running game, I get calls and I get questions, I've done some of it through COVID, through Zoom meetings and things of that nature, and then some of it in person. But yeah, I get those opportunities, and um, I may at some point do that, but I still love what I'm doing right now, um, and feel I'm healthy and things are good, and you know I like what I'm doing.
What about acting? You had recurring roles in Ballers and Guiding Light. Is that something that you still like doing? Is that almost just like a hobby?
Yeah, no, that's like I suck at that, but if people are gonna pay me to do it, I'll continue to do it. I'm not above that, but yeah, I'm not like I'm no one's professional actor. So I still get these ridiculous I get these ridiculous after SAG after checks, these
Yeah.
residual checks, and I kid you not, I have had multiple checks for $0, 0 cents. But it'll be funny. I'll get a stack every couple of months. I'll get a stack of 15 or 20 checks. I mean, it's just a stack of checks, and they'll be for like 37 cents. They'll be for like 22 cents. And I'm like, it cost you more to mail me this check than, and every now and again you'll get one like, oh, here's a big one, honey, $4.32. And at the end of the day, I'll have a stack of 15 or 20 checks, and it'll be $22. On all the stuff I've done over the years. So yeah, I would definitely do it, but I'm not quitting my day job. I came to the realization because there was a time where I was like, man, this is cool. This would be really awesome. Um, but I know what I've been blessed to do, and I know, you know, I know what my wheelhouse is, and that's NFL football. It's what I love, and it's what I'm passionate about, and so it's what I try to stick to.
How was working with The Rock?
Love him. Every day I told you every day I came into the Broncos locker room at about 5 a.m. and I get a cup of coffee, and I walk in the training room. I put on shorts because I was going to go get in the hot tub, and I grab myself a cup of coffee, and then I would read this plaque, and I read it every single day that I played for the Broncos. It still hangs in the training room to this day. It's a copper plaque, and it's an anonymous quote. So therefore, I have no idea who said this, but it reads this: You can you can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. And that always resonated with me because I want to be kind and I want to be gracious and um, I want to be encouraging. And sometimes I'm not that way on Twitter or on TV, but I am that way in person. And it's important and interesting. I'll give you a quick little story. So we're cutting this scene. We're out of this boat, and we pull this boat ashore, and this kid's going to run a 40. And anybody who watched Ballers will remember this. So he's going to run this 40 on the beach, and so he runs this 40, and he runs this ridiculous time on the beach, and then he runs around and he does backflips off of coconut trees and off of old boat and stuff, right? And so we run the 40, we do the scene, bam, we stop down, Now we're going to re-establish cameras for him running through and jumping off of trees. And there's this little dude who's a gymnast dressed just like the actor. And so he starts warming up. Now, meantime, The Rock, Dwayne goes back to his trailer, right? So we're all sitting there, myself and all the other actors and all the other, production people are standing around as this kid's doing backflips off a tree and really go. And I'm just watching him in amazement because I'm like, this kid is really he's really talented, man. This is awesome. And here comes Dwayne bebopping down the bike path, da, 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 da. And he walks right up and says to the kid, he's like, man, that's amazing. Hey, I'm Dwayne Johnson. What's your name? And the kid is like, I know who you are. I'm sorry. How'd you get into this? He goes, well, I was a gymnast at whatever it was, Coastal Carolina or whatever it was, right? I was a gymnast and blah, 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 blah. And he has this like full conversation with this kid, getting to know who he is, and the whole time I'm thinking to myself, hey, dumbass, you sat here and watched him for 20 minutes and you never said a word. And Dwayne just was like, wow, that's fascinating. What's your name? How are you? And the funny thing about DJ is when I'm around him, the only thing he wants to talk about is football. The only thing he wants to talk about is the guys that played during our era, because he didn't make it. But he played with Warren Sapp. So what was it like playing against Warren Sapp? What was it play like? And he really, when he says that he had this desperate desire to play football and it didn't work out, I'm telling you, firsthand knowledge, it still eats him to his core. It eats him that he couldn't make it in the NFL. And it's one of those things that had motivated him to have great success everywhere else he's ever been. But it's still to this day, that's what he wants to talk about.
Great stuff. Mark, I'll let you get to your radio show. Thanks so much for making time to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it. You were great. My pleasure. You take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. All right. That is Mark Schlereth. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. And as always, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.